Good morning, everyone. Mr. Speaker, I stand here to congratulate my cabinet colleague, Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh, on a meticulously crafted budget. A budget that looks at global realities, national needs, and with the input of his dedicated and tirelessly working team from the Ministry of Finance and from all the teams of every ministry across this country who would have given their input towards this 1.13 trillion budget. I say to all of them, thank you for your tremendous effort and work. Mr. Speaker, my father, who sat in this parliament for over 40 years, walking in with me when I came here for the first time, said to me, when people go low, you always stay on the high ground. Mr. Speaker, he has always advised me to set my own standards and to always be civil, polite, respectful, and to deliver with honesty, integrity, and transparency to the people of Guyana. That was his legacy, and I have not shifted from it. Mr. Speaker, I also stand here to vehemently condemn the attacks on every person in this National Assembly by those on both sides of the House. In fact, I just received an entirely personal attack in what should have been a budget debate that I could have responded to. Mr. Speaker, what bothers me is the consistent stream of vitriol that spews every time people, I will not say who, I think that's apparent, precede me in every budget debate, and also the constant distortions, the disingenuity, and the downright disregard for representing things accurately, correctly, honestly, and truthfully. Mr. Speaker, I do not need to castigate anyone, nor bring disrepute to anyone. I will merely share the work of the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security, and I will share how it has impacted on thousands of lives from 2020 to 2023, and what is in store for the people in 2024. Mr. Speaker, it is reprehensible that in the presence of our youth who sit here to understand what a budget holds for them and how they can learn from the parliamentarians of today, that they are treated to that kind of presentation. However, I move on. Mr. Speaker, I believe that to not support this budget speaks to not understanding the figures that have been given. How can one say that $29 million allocated, $29 billion allocated for health, which will deliver over 11 hospitals, upgrading of all health facilities, hosts, bringing world-class health care, is not for the people of this country? How can one say over $132 billion dedicated to the education sector, those are the biggest allocations among some in the budget, will not benefit children like these sitting here in this house when schools will be built, schools will be rehabilitated, the Because We Care cash grant will be increased, textbooks will be provided, and all of the children in every region will benefit. Tell me, Mr. Speaker, tell me when this budget dedicated to the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security at a value of $48.3 billion that caters for the most vulnerable in this country, our senior citizens, our children, our youth, and women. Tell me, why would people refuse to support a budget like this that brings relief to people, that alleviates what is now being termed something of epic proportions? So much so that the world is looking at instances of food insecurity, and our country is leading on speaking on food security. And as such, all of the allocations, be it agriculture, be it health, education, social services, speaks to the nitty-gritty of what our people expect to cushion the impact of what is happening globally. And in this manner, you have seen our government advance measures, as the Honorable Minister would have done through his budget debate, speaking to measures that will look at fuel and also freight charges to reduce the cost of many things that people need to have in their daily life. Mr. Speaker, much of the budget revolves around senior citizens, and I'm happy that the honorable member before me spoke at length about the 1800-year-old Palms, the Palms facility that was in the 1800s. And I would like to say that this government has allotted $172 million for a spanking new senior citizens home, because we are concerned about the senior citizens across this country. Mr. Speaker, it is important that the people of this country understand what the budget has to offer. And it is not only a senior citizens home that we are doing for those who fall into that category. There are many other things. The senior citizens home will be based in Enmore, and it is our vision that eventually those persons will move to that home, and the Palms will be something to look back at as where it all started, because it has absorbed so much in the rehabilitation and repairs to it. The pensioners over the tenure of the PPPC would have benefited from a 75% increase on their pension, and that is much more than what was given in 5 years of the tenure of my colleagues over the other side. The pensioners not only benefit from an increase to their pension, but they also are benefiting from the improvement to how they receive their pension. There's so many alternatives. Pension can be deposited in the bank. Pension is deposited in the bank account in the first 5 days of every month. Pension is also received through MMG, and pension can be paid to pensioners every day of the month, a vast difference from what I inherited. And every single day, a pensioner can go to an alternate venue and benefit from their pension. Mr. Speaker, we have also changed the way in which pensioners receive their books. In fact, I am hoping that more pensioners gravitate to the bank so that we will have less and less need for the book in this day and age. And we also would have seen that pensioners' books are received one year before they have to receive their pension, which meant the pensioners of 2024 received their books last year. And coming to those who would not have received cash grants, that is a still ongoing process, because we have definitely started and expanded the shut-in delivery, where pensioners don't even need to go anywhere. Those who are bedridden or blind had their pension, cash grants delivered to their homes. Mr. Speaker, 3,000 plus pensioners are benefiting from this. They also benefit from a direct delivery program in the hinterland and remote areas, where instead of having to travel far distances, our hardworking and tireless officers, and I thank them wholeheartedly, they go into these communities, village by village, community by community, to deliver a pension. Mr. Speaker, there's more in store. If you would permit me, I will tell you that we have over 100 plus pensioners who are over 100 years old. That speaks to increased life expectancy. And we started something called the Century Club, where pensioners who are in those years can benefit from amenities and facilities, and that will be expanded to cater for those who are between the ages of 95 and beyond the age of 100 years old. We are also going to be working at starting wellness and well-being sessions across communities in Guyana so that pensioners can have access to exercise, recreations, outings, social gatherings, so that they can understand that we are concerned about their overall quality of life. Mr. Speaker, I could share with this whole House and you a number of comments from pensioners, but I think it is best to go on the Facebook page of the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security and listen to all of them, because there are plenty. And so, Mr. Speaker, I say to you, the pensioners will continue to benefit from this government of PPP, as was committed to in our manifesto. Mr. Speaker, people living with disabilities. You know, I understand the dilemma of the opposition, because they have to find things to say about this budget. I understand. That's the purpose of an opposition. But when it could just be contained in very, very violent, vicious attacks, it says to me, you really don't have much to say.
That's correct.
So, Mr. Speaker, I will say to you that I had a dilemma. My dilemma was very different and similar, because I wanted to compare what we were doing with what you did. But a lot of the programs never even existed, so I had nothing to compare to. That was the difficulty I had. And so, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you about some of the programs that have become flagship programs in the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. And those include our Persons Living with Disabilities program. Last year, we opened a brand new facility called the Learning Lab. Never before, people living with disabilities in their adult years had the opportunity to experience technical vocational education, nor did they ever had the opportunity of accessing microfinancing from a revolving fund, brand new. Mr. Speaker, we were able to train just under 300 persons from across the country living with disabilities, and we are aiming to increase that to beyond 400 persons. Mr. Speaker, here's another program. The Persons Living with Disabilities Assistive and Support AIDS program didn't exist. Getting into office in 2020, I realized people had great difficulty in accessing things like a wheelchair, accessing walkers and white canes. And so this program started, Mr. Speaker, and we have been able to help hundreds of persons in every region. All they have to do is to request it. That's it. There is nothing more than that. And Mr. Speaker, if that is favoritism, fine, because I love people who are vulnerable, and I'm privileged to be able to serve them and to serve them with humility and serve them in such a way that their quality of life continues to be improved. Mr. Speaker, another new program, the I Care program. This program would have benefited, again, people in their thousands. From 2021 to 2023, since the program started, we were able to provide free testing and free tested spectacles. It was never there in communities, in addition to giving, this is entirely free. What was there was some assistance towards spectacles. Now, Mr. Speaker, getting into the office, let's talk about it. There was no difficult circumstances unit. What it was funding that was used at the minister's discretion. There is now a unit that accounts for every penny and also serves people living with disabilities and the most vulnerable, from those persons who are experiencing difficulties, including the ravages of fire, persons who need help towards their funerals, persons who need help towards spectacles. And now, in addition to what the I Care program is doing, there has been an allotment of vouchers that will benefit all children, 200,000 plus children in schools, to help them with testing of their eyes and towards helping children and pensioners with spectacles. Mr. Speaker, that's real progress. You know, we're building on something. We have something to build on. And Mr. Speaker, when you have something to build on, you can speak about prosperity. When you have not much to talk about, then we get what we got before. So, Mr. Speaker, when I continue in this vein, in this presentation, in this home, I would like to say the night shelter. That's one of the first places I visited in 2020. Today, the night shelter's capacity has increased to 115 persons. Currently, there are 104 persons at the night shelter, which will now benefit from a kitchen where food can be prepared, meals can be prepared for those persons, and that will be to the tune of $17 million. And the roof of the night shelter will gain some benefit from the allotment towards its repairs, as well as the fence. Mr. Speaker, you know how many people were in the night shelter? 38 people in 2020. 38 people. So don't come and call figures and create distortions in people's mind. I'm telling you the figures. Go back and check it. Mr. Speaker, the night shelter has some fabulous stories. I'll tell you just one. There was a man living at the Wales market. He was abandoned by his family. He had a fractured pelvis and he was blind. He couldn't see. You know what happened? He was taken to the night shelter, one of many. And he had surgery done. And now he can see because for free, under the Ministry of Health's program, his cataracts were dealt with. That is what we do at the night shelter. And I want to thank the staff there and my colleague who sits in this house, Ms. Vera Sami. Mr. Speaker, you know, it is easy to get carried away with oneself. But Mr. Speaker, let me talk about Spotlight. The Spotlight Initiative. That initiative is a hallmark signature program of the People's Progressive Party Civic. How do I know? Because I signed on to the Spotlight Initiative, spearheading it on behalf of the government, and signed on with the then UN rep, Mikiko Tanaka. Mr. Speaker, I know because I was told at that time that that initiative was not interesting enough for anyone to sign on for. The rest of the region signed on. And from then to now, we started 8 months later than everyone in the region. You know what's the outcome? It is the most successful initiative across the region. You know what's the outcome? I now sit on an assessment panel of people as the only person from this region to look at other Spotlight programs across the world. Mr. Speaker, this is not my assessment. This is the assessment from the Spotlight Initiative team. Mr. Speaker, last year I held a ministerial forum, bringing together my colleagues from the Caribbean. All of them, without exception, have said that they would like Guyana's model or elements of it in their own countries. Mr. Speaker, there are many things that we started. The toll-free 24-hour hotline 914. Everybody wants to take credit for everything, but you had 5 years to do it, right? Then we also harnessed IT, and we have the iMatter app, where all the resources to combat gender-based violence could be found quite easily. And that app is upgraded now with a WhatsApp chat feature. So persons who experience gender-based violence could have access to counsel, therapy, counseling, and all the services of, including anybody, of the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. The survivors, all these things were started in the last 3 years. The Survivors Advocate program was started and will continue, and this gives a personalized assistance to any person who experiences violence. Mr. Speaker, we also have the survival kit. We also have the Safe Voucher. We have also seen expansion of our shelter projects, and those are investments made by this government, specifically shelter. We have been able to pay 3 months' rent for persons who experience gender-based violence when they want to leave home. Mr. Speaker, it is a very comprehensive gender-based violence response. And instead of being against it, if you really care for the lives of women, tell them about these programs so that they can get help. Mr. Speaker, don't sit and try to be a hero about it. Tell them, because I would like them to use these programs as they are unfolded. In fact, over 1,200 persons have enrolled for the Community Advocate Network program. They were trained, and that is in addition to 8,000 other people in key positions who were trained on gender-based violence. That is the investment we make to respond to gender-based violence. The Community Advocate Network program will yield the kind of help in communities where people are part of government's initiative to combat gender-based violence. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that those persons who experience gender-based violence do not only have to turn to legal aid, which is heavily subsidized by the PPPC and was an initiative started in terms of the subsidizing of it under the PPPC government. We now have the Legal Pro Bono initiative that caters to 500 persons, a collaboration with the Guyana Bar Association. And today I want to speak on something that happened a few days ago. My brother and I, the Attorney General, had the privilege of opening for the first time in the region, the Hope and Justice Center, one of two. And this was in Region 4. This is an initiative that was born out of discussion, collaboration, and a desire to ensure that the systems are easier for women, men, anyone who experiences violence to report and to get help. So in one place, the first one is in Lusignan in Region 4. A person can make the report. They can get medical help, medical report. They can get counseling. They can get legal recourse. They can have access to restorative justice. And that's something I know the Honorable Attorney General is very invested in. And all of this is work that would have happened and work that will continue in 2024. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to talk about trafficking in persons. Here again, it's collaboration among the ministries of Human Services, Home Affairs, Foreign Affairs, and all those agencies, health, that would have to respond to persons who are trafficked rather. And so we have seen our country retain its Tier 1 status up to last year. That's not insignificant. Mr. Speaker, we have seen more prosecutions. We have seen thousands of persons who have been trained. And when we look back at the budget that was apportioned in the past, look, for gender-based violence, nothing really. We are now in the 20s when it comes to millions of dollars to tackle gender-based violence, and similarly for trafficking in persons. Mr. Speaker, there are many, many agencies and units that fall under the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. But before I get into more of that, I want to tell you, legislation. Under this government, the Counter Trafficking in Persons Act. In this year, we will be putting a number of bills on the floor. The Family Violence Bill, which has benefited from extensive consultation and will provide relief to those persons who seek protection under the justice system. Coming up, the Harassment Bill as well. And both of those will have policies. In fact, the draft of the gender violence policy will be completed this year. There's a referral system pathway that has been done, integrating all of the agencies across the ministries so that we can respond cohesively and competently. There is also going to be a policy that will be done this year on gender inclusion. And there are many more policies and legislations that will be coming to the floor of the House, which I hope you will support, honorable members, and not as when I remember my baptism when I first spoke on suicide and asked for the decriminalization of suicide in 2016. You voted it down as a government then.
As government?
Yes. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to give a background and context to what we're doing. Solid work. Mr. Speaker, we also have the WIN program, and that is very close to my heart. You know, there's a lot of noise. And you're telling people not to support. But the women in this country never listen to you. You know why? We were able in 3 years to train 11,500 women under the Women's Innovation Investment Network, WIN. They ignored you completely. And so in ignoring you, what happened? 48% of those trained are now in entrepreneurship. Over 850 women are on the WIN app, where we harness IT to allow women at no cost to them to advertise their businesses. By the way, the WIN program is exactly and entirely free. And again, I can't compare because nothing like that existed. Mr. Speaker, the WIN program offers hybrid model type training, offers training at the Ghana Women's Leadership Institute, and it also goes out into communities and trains women. Now, in every region, 1 to 10 women have been trained, 1 to 10, which puts women in the hinterland in a better position. When Dr. Anthony opens those hospitals, he will have no dearth of patient care assistants, elder care trained women. That is development. That is investment into human resource and people. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to say the WIN program will continue. In fact, we have targeted what we tried to do in 2 years for just 1 year, because we utilized the Coursera platform last year, which allowed us to really be able to offer. Now, collaboration with the public service ministry will allow us to do even more training programs. I have no doubt we'll exceed that number. Mr. Speaker, not only did women receive training and had access to the Women in Business clinics, where they were able to benefit from business literacy training and write business plans, but 25% of them gained employment. Mr. Speaker, these are not insignificant figures. These are real people behind those figures. Go out there and look at all the springing up of new businesses owned by women, and all of them, if not many of them, will also tell you that they were at the We Lift expositions held by the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. Again, I can't compare it, but in the first year, it was 75. The second year was 150 women. The third year, it was over 200 women. And your guess is as good as mine in terms of how many more will come on board through the We Lift program that this ministry offers. For the first time in the history of the region of this country, there is a female business incubator that allows women to walk into the Cove and John environment or call to get support for growth, sustenance, expansion of their businesses, help on business plans, access to microfinancing, and all of that and more. Mr. Speaker, when I went to the Ghana Women's Leadership Institute, which was started as an initiative of the People's Progressive Party Civic in the 90s, I was horrified. There was nothing in there to begin with. There was an old decaying computer room with a few broken computers. Go and see it now. In fact, no, I don't need to say that. Mr. Duncan, honorable member, you went with me recently as part of the Social Services Sector Committee, and all of you marveled at what was there. Because we had a computer room, we had a training facility, we are going to expand that computer room, we are going to open the culinary center this year to provide training for, again, thousands of women who will benefit not only from the training, but the startup of their business. Mr. Speaker, it is, sometimes I wonder in what surreal world or parallel universe. I'll leave it there. I won't finish it. Mr. Speaker, I believe that more information needs to be gathered when you speak about this ministry. And Mr. Speaker, not that kind of vile kind of response, but real information, to look at the real work that we have been doing, not me alone, all of the members of the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security, and I extend my heartfelt thanks and gratitude to them. You talk about people leaving, people have the freedom to go anywhere they want to go, whether it's to another ministry, to another occupation, to have another profession, and we continue to replenish those spaces. Why? Because government is investing in training. That's why. So more and more young people are coming on board and having the opportunity to understand and to work for the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. Mr. Speaker, I haven't even touched on childcare, so let me do that right now. So, Mr. Speaker, the childcare and protection agencies falls under the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. This year, we will be able to completely revamp the Sophia Care Center, which really needed revamping. And so we will be able to add that facility to the brand new kitchen and dining facility built under this government within the last 3 years. Mr. Speaker, we're also developing a model residential facility for children living with disabilities, this government. Mr. Speaker, we're also building an entire facility for adults living with disability to the tune of $112 million. Mr. Speaker, $73,112,000 and $44 million for children's residential facilities, all of that investment in people living with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, I heard a lot of talk about cement and sand and stone budget, but you got to build things like these so that you can cater. You ask for those things. How else if we don't use those ingredients for construction? I don't know. And then one.
Minister, we have another ingredient we have to give you is an extension so you could build on this foundation.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Speaker, may the honorable member be given 5 minutes to conclude her excellent presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Persaud. Honorable Minister, Dr. Vindhya, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I heard that there are soaring expectations. Mr. Speaker, expectations can only soar if people deliver before, and we have. It's as simple as that. If you didn't deliver, what kind of expectation you expect? Mr. Speaker, right? You can't have expectations when people are incapable of delivering. So yes, I understand that very well. That makes the most sense to me. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that the Mahaika Girls Home will have a complete rehabilitation to the tune of $37 million. Now let's talk about juveniles. These young people may come into conflict with the law, and we want to give them a second chance. We want to make sure they're dealt with in accordance with the Juvenile Justice Act. And that act provides for us to deal with these young people in a very different way. The Juvenile Justice Processing Center will be built at a cost of $63 million, and that will be based in Region 4 to cater to the needs of our juveniles. Mr. Speaker, over 100 ex-prisoners and their families will also benefit from this ministry's budget. So the work that we do speaks for itself. And I also believe that our young people should be very familiar with what this government is doing for them. And I can see.
Minister, let me just tell the person shouting that on parliamentary words about 6 times he already did. I'll ask his chief whip to control him, that very graceful gentleman.
Thank you for your protection, Mr. Speaker. But you know, it comes back to what I said. You want to conveniently condemn things when you yourself engage in things that are unparliamentary and are completely unacceptable. Mr. Speaker, you know, we have worked on moving with parents in this country. So we have a parenting program to roll out, a parenting manual, a parenting workbook, and we are also looking at increasing the number of day and night care and early childhood facility. Now, this is a new concept. I spoke about this at ECLA, and all those who were there said, what on earth is that? We would like to get on board. This is beyond now the Caribbean regions. This is Latin America. And so this is a new concept that will be introduced to our country, and consortiums of women will benefit from this model because we've been training them. The government has also provided the child care subsidy to help persons to start these, and also to help parents with 3 months of children being placed at day and night care and early childhood facilities, so that we can have children cared for. In fact, 2 model early childhood day and night care facilities have been looked at, and one of those is in Region 3. Honorable Member Mr. Mahipal, Mr. Speaker, should come when it's open, because it will be a model center. And so this is a center that have early childhood development, day and night care offered there, very different to what is here now. We also have the reunification draft policy, the early childhood policy. This is very different from the existing daycare and early childhood centers that exist, are running across the country with our oversight and supervision. Mr. Speaker, the day and night care facilities are to the tune of $89 million and $75 million, and will be based in regions 3 and 4. Mr. Speaker, I can continue to give you the fine details of everything that we're doing, but I want you, the members on the other side of the House, the honorable members, to speak to the people who continually benefit. I want to categorically say that when one uses the word nepotism, they should know what it means. No one related to me is at the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. Mr. Speaker, it is very, very important when words are bandied around, people must know what they mean. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the government of Guyana and the Ministry of Human Services will continue to commit to the delivery and the expansion of programs, initiatives that will improve the quality of life of the people of Guyana, building on what we would already have achieved and moving towards the prosperity that we speak of. Mr. Speaker, when we speak of this budget, it is a budget that is people-centered, infrastructural development, revolving around working with businesses, small, medium, and large. It is a budget that works for our country to rise, to soar. We talked about soaring expectations to soar. So, Mr. Speaker, I ask the other side of the House to ease your conscience, support this budget, and let's continue to deliver to the people of Guyana. I thank you so much.